Hello, everyone. My name is Gretchen Ketner, and for the next few minutes, I want to talk about this idea of connectedness and what it means for us as teachers and learners. As we get started, I'd like you to take a moment just to look at this image. What do you notice? What does it look like to you? What are you wondering about? Do any questions come to your mind as you look at it? And maybe just take a second to jot down anything that came to your mind. If we have time during the discussion, we can share some of our ideas. So for the next few minutes, I want to look at some different kinds of connections and connectedness and how each one relates to learning. This can help us to become more effective as teachers. We'll look at connections within the brain, connections with ourselves, with others, and finally with class material. So let's jump in and start with connections within the brain. Inside our brains, we have neurons, and the neurons are connected to each other in what are called neural networks. These are groups of neurons that work together to achieve a goal. So of course, there are millions and millions and millions of neural networks in our brains. Neurons working together to achieve a goal, these networks, they are pathways. And when we learn, we're actually creating a new neural pathway. So as we learn new information or skills or habits, we're adding to our neural networks or we're strengthening the existing ones. If we learn something new or we do something different, we're creating new pathways. And this idea of neuroplasticity means that each time we think or do something, we strengthen a neural pathway. These are our habits. But if we do something different than we have typically done, we're creating a new path. So as if we start using our new roads or paths more and the old ones less, this is neuroplasticity. What we've actually done is change the structure of our brains. So if we have repeated and focused attention toward a change, we rewire our brains. So in creating these new pathways, changing the brain in these ways, we can actually restructure our brains. And this is something that's actually happening every day as we do actions, as we think, as we develop habits. Our brains are changing every day. So thinking first about how learning happens and the connections within our brain, we move now to connection with ourselves. This means the importance of knowing how we are. Here's a picture of the brain. You can see, of course, the blue area is the cortex and the prefrontal cortex, this area of the brain that deals with higher order thinking skills like abstract thought and reflection. These are the functions that we need our brain to be doing if we're going to learn effectively. So when the brain is calm and at rest, it's at its full capacity to think and to problem solve. When I'm calm, my prefrontal cortex is online, we could say, and ready to learn. But when I'm stressed, my prefrontal cortex is in effect shut down and learning is hindered. So if something very stressful is happening, all the brain's energy and focus moves to different areas. If it's something very threatening and potentially traumatic, the brain stem is taking up all the focus in survival mode and that fight or flight response. The prefrontal cortex is not really fully operational. If it's maybe not traumatic, but still a stressful event, maybe that central area in the brain, the amygdala, where there's more emotional response happening, that is the area in focus. So again, if I'm very stressed, my brain is not really ready to learn. So it's important to know how I am, and it's important for us as teachers to know something of how our learners are. Are they ready to learn? Are they connected and regulated within themselves? There are many activities that we can do with our learners to help with regulation and reflection, to bring that calm and readiness to learn. High stress levels, like I said, can impact not only learning, but memory, behavior, and physical and mental health. So if we have things like mindfulness or relaxation activities, these can help to reduce stress and anxiety. They improve our focus and self-regulation, and thus academic performance. A mindfulness activity could be as simple as taking 3 or 4 deep breaths. Or it could be doing, maybe a short reflection activity. Maybe students have a little journal they can write in, or a time to close their eyes and just rest. I've started using exit tickets to allow students just a brief time of reflection, maybe once a week. Maybe I'm asking them to answer a question like, what is something you feel grateful for this week? Or what is something you feel proud about this week? Or what is something that you learned this week? Brain breaks are another way to help regulate our emotions and our systems. For teens, studies show that 20 to 30 minutes of concentrated study requires a 3 to 5 minute break. The break is essential to help consolidate memories and build those connections in the brain that we talked about. The brain needs time and space to lay down those new neural pathways. So a brain break, it could just be a simple break, like we're going to stop learning for a couple of minutes. Or it could be short activities involving movement, or maybe games that are using different parts of the brain, like a drawing or doodling game. Maybe it's a quick little discussion with a silly prompt or something like that. Just something to let the brain operate differently or take a rest from learning. And physical activity is also really great for regulation. Regulating breathing, reduces muscle tension, and can distract from a stressor if somebody is focusing on a stressor. Physical activity, it could be stretching, it could be jumping jacks, it could be let's have a 2-minute dance party. There are lots of ways to incorporate physical activity into our classroom. And again, all of these things to help our learners be regulated and be calm enough to learn. Another type of connection that is very key for learning is connections with others, connection with the teacher, connection with others in the class. A sense of belonging is key for learning. Feeling like you belong creates a sense of safety. And when you feel safe, guess what? The cortex is open for business. The prefrontal cortex is ready to learn. If I don't feel safe, I can't learn, or I'm going to have a much more difficult time learning. So how can we help our learners feel more connected with others? We want to create an empathic bond. We want to help students to feel noticed and seen and safe, so that this contributes to the sense of community and belonging that they need. We can do activities to foster connections with others. And you all know many of these. This is something we can discuss in the discussion time, but as simple as using everybody's names, this builds community. Modeling and teaching respect. I'm curious to know how teachers do that. How do you model and teach respect in your class? Circulating. Studies show that the more a teacher can circulate among the students as they're doing their work, the more students will feel involved, included, motivated, and supported. Or short check-ins. Just taking a moment. It can be as quick as 1 or 2 seconds to just connect with an individual student, to show them a little bit of attention, to ask one question about their day. These kinds of short check-ins also can go a long way to help students feel connected and safe. And then we also have collaborative learning activities that can help to build community and connection. There's a couple of cooperative learning activities on the screen: Jigsaw, literature circles. You probably know that cooperative learning involves students working together in small groups to accomplish shared goals or to complete group tasks. So this is a strategy that not only promotes learning, but also promotes the social side and that sense of connection with others. Competitive team games also can be great for building community. If we're playing a game, we're getting rewards in the brain. Like if you're scoring points, these are rewards. But the presence of peers increases the brain's response to reinforcers even more. So if we're playing competitive games with our classmates, the players are getting even more rewards, and that's going to help them feel that sense of connection. And the last type of connection to think about is connections with class material. We want to find ways to help our students engage deeply with the material that we're bringing to them, because this is how they're going to learn and remember it. So phenomena like attention, association, memory, and thinking about thinking, these all support learning. If I can have my attention fully engaged, if I can, in my mind, make meaningful connections of the new things I'm learning with things I've already learned, if I have opportunities to repeat and rehearse the material I'm learning, and if I can learn to think about my thinking and learning, then I'm going to learn and remember more effectively. Of course, there are many ways that we can help our learners to connect with class material. These are just a very few examples. So we have activities to engage the attention. If we can use surprise or use some kind of hook to grab students' attention, this is going to help things, help material stick with them. So one example of this is the notice and wonder activity. This is what we did at the beginning of the presentation. I asked you to look at the image, to notice things, and to wonder, to articulate questions about it. I was trying to grab your attention with a hook using that image. Activities that help our students to make connections, whether with previously learned material or with just all the material that they're learning. One of these is hexagonal thinking. During the discussion, I hope to show you a couple pictures of this because I had a chance to try this in one of my classes recently. Repetition and retrieval. We want to have opportunities to rehearse what we're learning for memory. So a spiral review, for example, is a strategy that involves giving a small number of questions or tasks to learners to review each day, frequently repeating the same material over and over again. Self-referencing is another kind of connection and repetition or retrieval activity. We tend to remember information about ourselves better than anything. So anytime we can help learners connect new information to themselves, their own experience, their prior knowledge, or similar prior emotional experiences, they're more likely to remember it. So anytime we do activating prior knowledge before we read a text, or ask students to respond to something that we've learned with questions like, does this remind you of anything that you already know? Does it remind you of something that you've read before? We're helping them with self-referencing. And finally, metacognition. This is that thinking about thinking. One example here is to take a KWL activity, which you may know as a reading strategy. What do I know? What do I want to know? And what did I learn after reading? Taking that and extending it into more of a metacognitive activity by incorporating some planning. What do I want to know, and how can I plan my reading or my doing to learn what I want to know? Monitoring along the way. Am I getting what I want out of this text or activity? And then evaluating at the end. Did I learn what I wanted to learn? Were my strategies effective in helping me? So coming back to the brain, how do these types of connection activities affect our brains? Connecting with ourselves and others helps to regulate our emotional state and reduce stress levels, which helps ready the brain to learn. We need the sense of safety and belonging that comes from healthy connections with others in order to learn. Adding information and making new connections strengthens the existing neural networks in our brains. Doing something new or in a new way creates new neural pathways, and that effectively restructures our brains. Connections that support and allow for learning, and the connections that are made in the brain as we learn, are part of this process of restructuring our brains. Our brains are changing every day, and we as educators can help our learners' brains change for the better. Here are the questions that we'll discuss. Thank you.